Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Sweet Truth Podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with Emmanuel Jimenez,
Yes.
also known as Manny.
Yeah.
Manny is a great friend of mine. He is something of a figure in the community here in Beacon.
Appreciate you.
Great guy. And he's also the head of a transformative new form of emotional therapy for men, specifically, called Men's Circles, which we are going to get to. But before that, I'd like to know more about this red light therapy you were telling me about. He was on his way here, and he had a couple of clients doing red light therapy, and I didn't know what that was, and I'm curious, and I told him to just save it for when we sat down.
Yeah.
So here we go. Let's hear about it.
So red light therapy, what it is in a definition sense is just red wavelengths and LED wavelengths come together. You use them, and basically it treats the skin. It treats aches and pains. It's good for anxiety. It's good for even stronger ailments like Lyme's disease and things like that. It's not a cure, but it's definitely something that you can add to help you. And you just stand in front of it. It's not as invasive as a sauna or anything like that. So a lot of the times clients tend to feel like, oh, well, what am I getting out of it? But progressively, if you use a red light therapy machine for whatever your purpose is, you're definitely going to see some results.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So you have two different lights? Like, you using like light bulbs? Are you using, what does it look like?
It's the one that we have at my Zendan, which is the local wellness studio in town, is like a stand. And there's a bunch of panels that are together. It looks pretty cool, like something out of the movie Tron.
Cool.
And you just turn it on and it beams this light at you. It's far infrared and near infrared light. So I'm not sure which one is which, but one of the lights are you can't see them with the naked eye, and the other light you can really see it because it's really, really bright, and it targets the mitochondria in your cells, which is like building you up and strengthening you, and it has so many benefits and so many intricate parts of it that it helps you with. It's something that what I describe to clients, I say it's like the closest thing we have to magic, because the benefits that come with it, the usability of it, how easy it is to use. It's pretty expensive piece of equipment to buy, especially if you buy like medical grade red light therapy machines, but I would say it's a worthy investment.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So I've never heard of this. I've heard of all sorts of things.
Yeah.
We had just talked about craniosacral therapy in our last episode with Nora. Never heard about that. I've done what's it called? When they freeze you, basically put you in like
cryotherapy.
Cryotherapy.
Yeah. I've wanted to try that a lot.
I've done that. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I've never heard of red light therapy. This is really cool. I'm very excited. I would love to try this one day.
I'm a big fan, and I don't make any money selling any machines. It was just something that I learned about because I met this wonderful woman who's actually my girlfriend. She's the one who owns the studio, and she told me about it, and at first I was as skeptical as the next guy. I was like, oh, what is this? But, I'm always curious, and I tried it out, and, since then it's done wonders, not only for my skin, it's done wonders for my I would say my mental health, my physical health. I practice Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, which is like a grappling martial art, and your joints are always like manipulated in ways that they're probably not supposed to. And I remember jacking up my elbow really, really bad. Like somebody was doing a submission that I won't name because probably most people won't know, but basically he's trying to manipulate my elbow joint, and I remember pulling my arm back out of the position, and I heard a sound that sounded like a paper ripping, and it was like one of my ligaments or joints.
Oh, my God.
And I couldn't fully extend my elbow without having excruciating pain. And my girlfriend, Alex, she was like, hey, honey, do red light therapy, and I just doing it. I did it 3 days in a row consistently, and I was able to lock out my elbow. Not without pain, but without the excruciating pain of not wanting to do it.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So in your experience, you think that the red light essentially got in there and repaired some of that cellular tissue?
That's a perfect word, repair. I think that red light therapy repairs in many different ways. It repairs the body.
So that red light is penetrating
Or
the
the
skin,
cells.
it's getting into the cells, and it's energizing them, essentially
Yeah,
giving
yeah.
them the energy they need to repair faster. Is that
You
the idea?
You definitely explained it better than I did.
Well,
Yeah,
there's that like, professional scientific explanation which you have to know.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's the lay person
Yeah.
who's like, what does this do?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Light makes me
That's
feel
true,
better,
yeah.
So yeah, it's always going to be simpler to the person that has no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not an expert on it, if I'm being honest, but I have experience with it, obviously, and I really like it. I think that if you're into wellness, if you're into improving your life in any capacity, I think that red light therapy is definitely a worthwhile option.
So when you get into a red light chamber,
Mm-hmm.
do you have to take off like all your clothes, or because it has to hit the skin, right? Or is it like
yes.
like if I hurt my elbow, do I need to specifically go like this towards like
You're very intuitively asking great questions. So what we recommend is that you strip bare, which means you're naked. Or if you want to stay in your underwear, you can. The more it touches the skin, the more it helps. So definitely no clothes. When you're there, the light's touching your skin, and that's just basically how it works. You literally just stand there, you don't do anything, and you just let the light touch you. Some people, maybe you want to meditate, maybe you want to sit down. Just as long as the light is touching your skin, you're fine.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I usually use it completely naked just because I want it to touch everything.
Get the whole
Yeah.
yeah,
Literally.
exactly. No, yeah.
Literally.
I want to be bathed.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
If I'm going to
exactly.
be paying for
Yeah.
the service, I mean,
Yeah.
I want the full Monty.
Yeah, exactly. And then also too, people do it in different ways. You can, there's like a tanning bed style red light therapy machine, which is like a lot of money, but again, worth it if you have the money to invest in it. There's a standing one that we have. You could even buy one that's like not that big. It's like this big. I have one of those at home, and that's really useful too if you have a specific spot. But you were very intuitive with that. Like if you have an elbow injury, kind of lean more towards the side or turn to the side and let the elbow,
take the brunt of that.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And do you have clients that are like, my God, I can't believe it. Like,
I have had some clients that react that way. If I'm being honest, more often than not, clients ask how many times they should use it. And then after they make the investment of continuing to come around, they go, okay, I see what it is. I'm very happy about that. I feel that most of the things in life that are worthwhile, they don't just happen like that.
100%.
You got to actually invest time, and then you actually see the results.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's sort of a universal law.
Yeah.
So, but so what you're saying is that essentially it's this, so it is a long-term process.
It's a
You need-
progressive healing situation.
Yeah.
It's a progressive feeling situation. It's a progressive, you have to be consistent with it to see the results. Some results are right away, like your mood, if you have some kind of anxiety, the way that we set the feng shui in the space, along with the fact that the red light therapy machine is working, people, have the result of instant reduction of anxiety and things like that, which I have also tested and experimented myself. I don't necessarily struggle with anxiety, but I've had anxiety before. I've had some PTSD before, used it for that as well, and it's very helpful.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So it also works on an emotional level.
Oh, yeah.
Or specifically with like the nervous system.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I wonder what a session costs.
So
Average.
as far as I know, a 20-minute session is $25.
Oh,
yeah.
that's great.
So when you mention like if I'm paying this much, in my head I'm like, it's actually kind of cheap. And the beauty of it is that it's right here in the community. Alex, who's my partner, she wanted to provide the community with a way, to learn about these things and experience these things that she used personally in her own life, and she wanted to make it affordable for everybody, not just a specific kind of clientele. So I respect that a lot. I think that was really, really cool on her part. And what it ended up doing actually is that it ended up inspiring a lot of different people. There's a lot of people now in Beacon and around the area that use red light therapy now. And you can say that those people, a lot of those people also too were customers of my Zendan. And
Okay.
yeah. And, I think that you can look at that in two angles. If I'm being frank, you can say like, oh, this is competitive, it's business. They see that there's money in it. They see there's a market in it. They might have not even thought that there was a market in it until they walk into my Zendan or whatever the case might be, or maybe they used it at a place like another spa or whatever. But I think that that's great though, and the reason why I think that that's great is because yes, we live in a society where you have to make money and all these things, but at the end of the day, if more people are healing, then we're good.
We're moving upward.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
1000%. So it's like if you're doing anything that inspires people to help themselves, anything that's going to inspire people to improve themselves or their lives, and then somebody else who has the money or the investors to do so, and they start to do it because they see a market, they want to make money, but they also want to be a part of this thing, bro. This is this is either way. It's a win-win, because the customer walking in, hopefully the other people who put red light therapy in their businesses don't jack up the price too much and make it affordable. The people who are walking in, when they walk out, they're going to be walking out differently than when they did when they walked in.
Right.
If I'm explaining that correctly.
Absolutely. No, you're leaving people better than when you found them.
1000%.
Yeah,
It's like this beautiful podcast. Like,
oh, thanks, man.
no, seriously.
That's really sweet.
And I'm gonna say something because I really want to get this out before we continue with any conversation. But it's like this beautiful podcast. Like, if somebody watches this podcast episode and goes, "Yo, you know what? I want to do this," right?
Mm-hmm.
That's great. You could look at that in your head and say, oh, this person's biting off of me, or, I'm the one who started it, or like there's a different, one thing that I've said before, there's a difference between Apple and Android. There's a difference between, there's a video game reference, but GTA and Saints Row.
Oh, I know. Oh, I get that.
There's a difference between Coca-Cola and Pepsi, right? One started it, and then one is trying to perfect it, but also being inspired by the people who started it, right?
Sure, yeah.
And I feel that if somebody were to try to start a podcast just like yours with the same concept and everything like that, that's great. Will they last? Don't know. But either way, if they're helping people and if they're doing something that they're passionate about and they're not doing anything negative, all power to them. You inspired them, and that's great. And you, like I said, you could look at it as like, oh, these people are biting off of me. Or you could look at it as these people see the vision that I brought into fruition. They're inspired, and now they're doing something. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And my full theory on this is, if I'm doing this, right, and then somebody wants to go out and start their own show or do their own thing, which they have, which is wild to me. Yeah. Like, it's been wild to watch someone come on here or watch one of my videos, and then they start doing their own version of their own videos, their own Instagram, whatever it is. I've watched that happen, and it's so exciting. Yeah. Because there's a direct transfer of energy from me to them. And then, in my mind, the more people that are doing things, right, the more energy that's going around and people are picking it up and doing things with it, the more I believe in the group. Yeah. You rise together.
It's a good belief to have.
You always rise together. The whole community, if the community is not rising together, then just one person is, and everybody else is going to suffer. And essentially, I find that success really comes in groups. It really comes in people working together, rather than this this sort of like, oh, only me, my way, everyone else, can suck rocks. You really get you really get a powerful you really get this like it is a form of magic, this powerhouse of working with other people.
Yeah, man.
It creates new realities that you couldn't have created on your own. And as long as there are people that you love and trust, and they love and trust you, everybody's going to win.
Amen.
I always find that. Everybody always wins when everybody works together like that. So, yeah, anything I do on here and anyone I inspire outside of here is just, it's positive energy moving upward for me and everyone else.
Let's hold on to that word, because, like I said, I have something that I really want to get out. So I know that this is going to be shown to people, and people are going to be able to see this. So something that I like to practice is honoring my fellow man. So on this podcast, on your podcast, I want to honor you, Michael.
Oh, thank you, buddy.
Seriously. For one, every interaction I've ever had with you has been a great one, and we always have great conversations. Conversations that leave me thinking and contemplating and things like that. But also off camera, when you were explaining to me how you started this, you said, I want to do something that I love. And you did that. And that, sitting down, hearing that, really inspired me. And, you know, another thing that I want to say about you is that you really have a great voice and a great way of explaining things. Even my girlfriend said this. We were kind of watching an episode of The Sweet Truth, and she's like, wow, he has a really good voice. I was like, yeah, he does. And that's something that I've noticed interacting with you and knowing you. So it's been a pleasure actually to know you, and I just want to honor you in front of the audience.
That is incredibly sweet, and I feel like, I don't want to say incredibly again.
Yeah.
But I feel humbled beyond what I felt before.
Man. Yeah.
And it's a special feeling. So I just want to say thank you so much for saying those words.
You deserve it.
I appreciate that. Whenever I have people on here, I'm always thinking before we start, I'm like, all right, make sure all that spotlight's on them. Make sure they're getting all that love. Make sure you're asking them questions. Don't talk about yourself too much. So to get it from the other side is very, very sweet of you. Thank you so much.
I think it's important. I think it's important that men acknowledge other men for what they're good at. And the reason why is because being a man in this world, I'm not going to just say in this country, in this society, in this world, is very competitive. And it's very, a lot of times, very cutthroat. And, you know, it's not to say that being a woman in this world is not that way, but we are men and we only know the male experience. And I find it that when men see that they are appreciated, it's something that uplifts them. When men see that they are seen, it's something that's very healing for them. And I didn't do that because I'm like, oh, I have to heal you. No. But I did
accept that healing.
Yeah,
for sure, though.
I did that because, to be honest with you, it's true. And you know, a lot of men are out here and they're doing good things and they have good intentions, and nobody's looking at them and saying, yo, bro, you're doing a good job. You're doing pretty decently, or this thing that you do, you're good at. You know, a lot of men expect nothing in return for what they do. And a lot of times, maybe you should, you know, maybe you should just take the responsibility you're given, you know, whether it's being a father, whatever the case might be, and do what you have to do. Go to work, do your job. But I think that men deserve some appreciation, some love, some, yo, bro, you did a good job. Or, hey, you're inspiring me, whatever the case might be. And you said something, you said community, right? It works. We all work together. This humanity would have not survived if it wasn't for community. It's as simple as that.
Absolutely.
We formed communities, whether, you know, different ways of life, different ways of thinking, different, you know, ways of farming, whatever the case, we formed communities. So that idea of like, I'm going to make it on my own, and, you know, I
don't need anybody
yeah,
else.
Exactly. It's like that subculture on Instagram that like posts like reels of like certain Netflix original shows that are shot with very dark lighting, and it's like, you don't need her, king, and it's like somebody smoking or whatever the case might be. Like, bro, that is like, or like the Sigma male thing. We're gonna talk about that because I love talking about that. But it's like,
I can't wait.
the idea of this like man who doesn't need anybody and who's like rejecting everything. It's like, bro, you need people, you need community. Like, the greatest resource in this world is people. You know,
100%.
The reason why a lot of people probably think that they don't need people is because technology affords them, you know, the comfort of having all of these things. But you need people.
No, absolutely. And I think there's this conversation about not needing someone, right? What that really started as was, you don't need this abusive person in your life. You don't need these people to that don't love you. You don't need their approval. The other side of that is, go find people that do love you, that do want to take care of you,
That do appreciate you.
Because you are a human being, and you do need love, and you do need community, and you do need to be seen and respected and appreciated. So
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right.
100%.
There's that one side of it that is, yes, get out of there. You don't need this person. They're not taking care of you.
Yeah, 100%.
But no, we can't lose that community part. We can't lose that love for each other. That's where, I mean, we're human beings. there's so much evidence and documentation about how solitary confinement and putting people alone, putting them into places where they're not interacting with other human beings is incredibly damaging. It destroys the heart and soul of a human. So there is in no way, in no world would I ever suggest that people be okay with living by themselves, being an island.
Yeah.
I think that's just, it's not human.
If you're an island, you're much more easy to conquer.
Interesting.
Period.
Right.
If you think about it in a very masculine, barbaric, whatever sense, or if you think about it in a philosophical, psychological sense, if you're isolated with your own thoughts, you become depressed, cranky, irritable, whatever the case might be. And if nobody's there to check you and say, hey, that thought is actually pretty wild. Like, maybe you should take a beat on that, or whatever the case might be. If there's nobody to bounce your thoughts off of, it's hard, man. It's hard to know, when you're thinking a crazy thought every now and then, or and I don't mean just like crazy in the medical sense, but just like a thought that may not
damaging to you and to others.
Man,
that separates you.
Yeah, exactly. When you're in isolation, and I've been there. I have put myself in isolation on purpose. Like, I have willingly put myself in isolation. I think a lot of men do that. For whatever reason. And I think that my experience is that there is a part of isolation that does produce growth, in my opinion. I think that sometimes we do need to go back to the cave and mend our wounds or whatever, or like a eagle. I don't know if you know this, but eagles, they go into like caves, or they go into specific spots and they pluck their feathers, and then they come back and soar again. You do need to do that every now and then. But I think that for the most part, staying in isolation all the time and being isolated from people who will give you, honest opinion, people who care about you, all that stuff. Even if it's people who you're like, ooh, I don't want to be like that, or ooh, I don't agree with that. It reminds you what your morals and values are, whether it's a negative or positive. I think it's important. We like I just said, if you're an island alone, way easier to conquer, way easier to influence, way easier to, overcome all those things. We're stronger in numbers. That's why a lot of people try to divide us, whether it's on the color of our skin, our religious beliefs, our political, ideology, or whatever the case might be. It's like, bro, one, we're human beings. Okay. Two, if you want to be patriotic, we're all American. Let's figure it out together, because we're not going to figure it out by ourselves. We're going to figure it out together. So
absolutely. Yeah. No, I community first, isolation as a means of reflection, as a means of,
gosh, I love that word.
Deeper into yourself and trying to understand, letting go of things and trying to understand yourself, and then returning to the community a stronger, more honest self. You know what I mean? But not
more aware.
Not isolation as a normality, not as your day to day. People, and like you said, men are so often cutting themselves off emotionally from the world around them. I know one man, I'm not going to name, who in his relationships, if there's any confusion, if there's any sort of like miscommunication with the woman he's currently dating, he'll essentially stop talking to them to force them to come to him, because in his mind it's weak to communicate, to reach out, to ask what's going on, why did that conversation go weird. It's weak on the man's part, and you're emotionally weak, and you're gonna get manipulated if you open yourself up that way, which is just so far out there, so broken, so sad to me that nobody taught this otherwise very lovely human being how to connect and how to be emotionally vulnerable in a way that's not weakness but strength.
So, man, there's a lot of depth to that. There's a lot of like.
Well, I wonder if we can get into the man circle now about in this way. Like, I wonder if this can lead.
It's perfect segue for it.
Great. Yeah. Because I really want to talk about this. I think this is a fascinating concept, and I want it to spread.
Yeah. So, I'll just explain it. A men's circle is basically a place where men can come together. Generally, they sit in a circle. That's why they call it a men's circle. And they just talk, man. Literally, they just talk. They're open. They're vulnerable. It's supposed to be a safe space for men to come in. And you know what the funny thing about it is that every time I mention a men's circle to women, the generally speaking, they go to the extreme of like, it's a bunch of men who are complaining about women or who are very like toxic in their masculinity and who are like screaming and are like, yo, you're supposed to like make her submit, bro, and all of this stuff.
That's a
and
poker
then,
game.
Yeah, and then it's exactly. And then when you explain it to men, they think it's something super feminine, you know, super gay or whatever the case might be. It's like, oh, you know, it's gonna be a circle jerk and we're all gonna be crying and all of this stuff. And it's like, it's actually neither.
This is exactly why men need men's circles.
Yeah,
because the moment they hear about men gathering and not competing or complaining, they think that everybody is going to give each other,
man.
you know,
everyone's
going to be crying and weeping, and which they should.
Yeah, and to be honest, you know, like if you want to cry, cool, bro,
Yeah.
cry, it's fine. I got you. I hold the space for you. That's why we got it here. I always explain it like, you know, just full disclaimer, I don't have it all figured out. I'm not a guru. I'm not a prophet. I'm not your savior. None of those things. And I don't mean that in a like reverse psychology way, like I am, you know, like, no, I just mean like, I'm a human being, bro. I'm a man. And I'm trying to figure it out. You know, I'm learning. I'm a lifelong learner. We all are, you know, whether we know it or not. That's what this journey's about. It's about learning and growing and experiencing. And, you know, the reason why I started is because I saw that there was a need for it. And it wasn't just a need for other people. It was a need for me. You know, I wanted a place like this, and I always thought about it. And I was inspired by, you know, when I was younger, growing up in the Bronx, they call the Bronx the zoo, you know? And the reason why is because, like, one day you could walk outside of your house, and it's like, hey, how you doing? You know, you say hi to somebody, and then the next thing you know, you see like a crackhead being jumped by like, you know, 15-year-olds with yellow page books. You know, it's like just for fun because there's nothing else to do, you know, or you see a drunk guy, you know, beating on his wife or whatever the case might be. Like it can be a very hostile environment. And it puts you in a certain position where it's like, you don't trust anybody. You think everybody's going to scam you, you know, don't get me wrong. I'm not a tough guy. You know, in the Bronx, I was more like the bottom of the food chain. I was kind of soft, to be honest with you.
Sure.
You know, but I knew a lot of tough guys and, you know, being around them saved my ass a lot. But also what saved my ass was that at a very young age, I realized I have to stay in my lane and I'm not going to try to be something that I'm not. And those who were the real sharks, they respected me for that. But going back to the men's circle, the reason why I brought up the Bronx is that it hardens you and it makes you feel a certain way and it gives you like some kind of paranoia. And I feel like, you know, a lot of men are very, like we were saying, they're very isolated. They're very closed off. You know, it's always a competition. Like, you know, we're either raised or hardened to believe that nobody cares, and that we have to do it alone, and that, you know, nobody understands, and you can't talk to people about everything because you might be educating an enemy, you know, all of that stuff. You know, like it's like if you and me have a conversation and you say to me, oh, you know, like I'm having problems with my girl or having problems with my business, like how do you know that I'm not like, oh, I'm gonna save that for later, maybe I might use that against him or whatever.
Right.
You don't know, you know. So it's like it you know, it sucks, but that's the reality. And a lot of times too, not just like I mean, I learned this in the Bronx, but like anywhere, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be from the Bronx. But when men meet other men, a lot of the times those men look at each other and be like, oh, I could beat this guy up. Or if I fought this guy, would be, you know, like, and it gets double time for me because I'm a martial artist. But like, and I don't mean that to be a douchebag, but like, that's how hostile it is to be a man. You know, like it could be a very tough burden to carry. I don't think it's a burden. I think it's an honor and a privilege, but it can be a very tough burden to carry, you know. And you know, going back to your friend who you were talking about, he doesn't have people in his life that are telling him like, hey, there are moments where you can be vulnerable. Because that's another thing. Like the reason why the men's circle is so powerful is because don't get me wrong. I'm not this guy who's like, oh, we should be in touch with our emotions. Let's wrap ourselves in blankets. Like, you know, it's not like that. But, and if you have a men's circle and it's like that, more power to you. But,
Absolutely.
you know,
I love wrapping myself in a blanket.
No, I get it.
And tea.
Yo,
yeah,
a good blanket is good. But I'm
Right.
just saying, and I love tea too.
Right.
Especially in the nighttime with the red lights and everything. But men should be strong, tough, masculine. Is my opinion and what I believe is fact. However, they should also have a time where they can be vulnerable, where they can be honest, where they can be a little bit more reserved, maybe a little bit, even a little bit more feminine. You know what I'm saying? I think that each individual man or woman, they have a balance of femininity and masculinity. And for some people, you know, the bar is more raised on one end than the other. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that more often than not, men don't have a place where they can just be men and they can let their guard down. You know what I'm saying? Where they can have conversations they've always wanted to have, ask questions they've always wanted to ask, you know, just say things that they've always wanted to say in a place where it's not like, oh, I'm going to use that against you or I'm going to judge you or whatever the case might be.
Right.
Your friend may be thinking that, you know, because he's probably on certain YouTube channels, he's probably watching certain clips and videos on TikTok that talk about certain things about being a man and being a masculine man and this and that, because there's a whole subculture. And we'll get more into that. I don't mean to take the whole brunt of the conversation,
No, it's fine.
There's a whole subculture that's like teaching men how to be a certain way. And, you know, that can lead to certain extremes. But I think that as men, we need to heal ourselves and women need to go off and heal themselves. And then we could come together as more complete people. You know, another reason why I started the men's circles, because I was tired of hearing this word toxic masculinity. And it wasn't that I was tired of hearing it from a standpoint where I'm like, oh, no man is toxic or whatever the case might be. But I was tired of hearing about it because just like anything, isolation or, you know, what your friend does, you know, about how he provides isolation, doesn't want to be vulnerable because he feels like he's going to be weak. Yeah, all of this stuff.
Avoids weakness,
the word toxic masculinity, what it is trauma. That's what it is. It's trauma. It's women who or men who have experienced an experience with a man or somebody that they perceive to be masculine who used that masculinity in a negative way, who showed them a negative representation of that. Perfect example. It's like when you meet somebody who's a Christian, right? I identify as a Christian. And a lot of the times when I say that, I get this look on people's face. And honestly, there have been a few times where people smile and they look at me and they go, oh, you're a Christian? I go, yeah, I am. I believe in God, whatever. And they go, well, some of the worst people I met in church. I'm like, yeah, probably, you know, like, because what is church? Church is a building. It's a community of people that come together that feel or believe that they're flawed and they're lacking in something. And they believe that a creator can provide it for them. And they have this book of instructions and they go to that book for answers and things like that. So, bro,
but also some of the sweetest, most wonderful people I've ever met.
Yeah,
I've
no,
met
of
in
course.
church.
I agree with that. But I'm saying the reason why those people will say some of the worst people I met in church is because they're thinking about that one person.
You're right.
They're thinking about that one experience.
That news headline that grabbed their attention.
Yes, exactly. They're thinking about that one trauma that they haven't forgiven, so they might be even demonizing that person even more, or maybe not. You know, they're thinking about that one article that they read from that person who did this or whatever the case might be. So I just feel like, you know, there are bad representations of people and things. You know, there's bad representations of men. There are, you know, bad representations of women, bad representations of fathers and mothers and so on and so forth. But that bad experience, trauma, bad representation should not be the deciding factor. It shouldn't be the thing that determines, you know, that person or those class of people or those race of people or whatever the case might be.
That group as a whole.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And
same thing with masculinity. Like, masculinity is not inherently toxic, but there were people who you experienced that were toxic, who you perceived to be masculine. And if I'm being honest with you, those people, I would not call them masculine.
I agree. My belief is that a truly masculine man is strong in his ability to give of himself. He's not cut off from other people. He's the kind of person that is, hey, you can say whatever you want about me.
Yeah.
I am fully integrated in myself. and this is why I say that my wife has these masculine traits as well, and I share feminine traits, but she stands as a pillar.
Yeah.
And she gives constantly of herself and her love. And so I feel as though she's this rock, this something I can and other people can hold on to, because she's not afraid of you trying to take something from her. She's got that masculine trait of being like, I'm me, I'm here. I will give you love and grace, and you can have some. And I'm not afraid of you saying anything about me or taking anything from me, because I'm just so strong in that.
You said that.
You know, that's real men to me, or masculine, traits. Real masculinity is the strength of knowing that you are this provider of grace, wisdom, love, and you stand tall, and you are not brought down by people, being afraid of being vulnerable. You're not cutting yourself off from people. In fact, you're giving more, because you are so unafraid of losing. You're not afraid of losing.
And that word vulnerability is important because, like I said, there are moments where there's this guy who comes to my men's circle. He said that he grew up with a mentality where his father was like, nobody cares, rub dirt on it and keep working, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, blue collar guy. Classic. I respect that. Okay, I do. I think that a big portion of this society and the infrastructure in this society was brought up with that mentality. And a lot of times you do have to do that. And I agree with that to an extent. But I think that you can't give what you don't have. And if you're just constantly giving and giving and giving, you need to recoup. You need to go back in isolation. I'm glad that you explained that about your wife, which I want to give her a shout out to. She's a great person. I've always had great interactions with her as well. And she loves you a lot and respects you a lot. I can tell because I've been around her when you haven't been around. So I just wanted to shout that out. But what I wanted to say was that you saying that she's such a rock and she's like stand firm, and I think the right, I would add this word, is rooted. She's a very rooted person. And I think a masculine man is a rooted man.
Yep.
He's rooted in his ideals, his beliefs, his morals, his codes, things like that. So when you explain your wife being masculine, that's great. The thing about that is now, who does she go to?
Me.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Who does she goes to you, right? Who does she go to when she can take her armor down and just relax and be herself, right?
Right.
Okay, you have that with her. She has that with you. Most men don't have that, period.
Right.
They
Absolutely.
don't feel like they can have that. And they don't feel like they can have that with their wife. Because look at your boy. Your boy's like, oh, hey, I don't want to talk to her or whatever. I'm just going to, self-isolate or cut her off. And that's what I have to do. I have to cut her off.
Wait till she comes crying to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And it's like, no.
Oh, man.
What if some moments, if you're playing stupid games, you win stupid prizes. If you're messing around with somebody who's immature or whatever the case might be, all right, you got to cut them off. But, if you're in a relationship, relationships are tough and they're hard, and you got to work, you got to work through them. And I think that's a big one. The belief that you can work through something, it's a very big belief to have. And a lot of men don't have that. Like men deal with depression, suicide, addiction, and so do women. But like I said, I only know the male experience.
But we're not really talking about the male experience.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not really,
exactly.
and that makes sense. It's been male dominated world for a long time, and now we're saying, okay, it's time for other people. That's true.
Trying to correct it.
But you and I and other people, we have to make sure in the middle of that popular wave of female empowerment, we're not letting go of and losing sight of our male brother or male identifying brothers who need our protection, love, our vulnerability. And we can't be losing their stories while 100%. All of this wonderful stuff's going on in the popular, not popular, but in media.
At
the forefront of media.
100%.
These people can't be lost. And so this is my question is, how did you find yourself starting a men's circle?
So, like I said, I saw that there was a need for it. I found myself having open, honest, vulnerable conversations with men, when it was just me and them. Like let's say that all this stuff wasn't here, these mics weren't here, I'd have conversations with you about it. And I saw that it was not only beneficial to the man I was talking to, but beneficial to me. I really loved it and enjoyed it. And the reason why I have always been this vulnerable was because of my mother. I grew up with a single mother, and I mean, I could spend the whole podcast talking about how great my mother is, but
Me too.
One of the unsung hero. But one of the great things about my mom was that she instilled in us the ability to communicate, like, extremely vulnerably. We would have family meetings every week. Me, my mother, and my brother. We would just talk. If we were arguing, if me and my brother fist fight, she would bring us together. We'd have group hugs, all these things. And now some people may say, oh, you were raised soft, but like, no, I was taught how to love, how to communicate,
Right.
how to be open, honest, vulnerable, how to speak my mind, all of these things. So I've never had a problem having vulnerable conversations, for the most part, to my recollection. So it's just always been something that's been natural to me. Now, I've been afraid of having vulnerable conversations because I've been around people who are, quote unquote, hyperly masculine, or who try to shame you, or say things like, oh, that's gay, like we don't talk about that, or stuff like that. But I've always been willing, and I've always had the ability to. Communication hasn't never been something that's a problem for me because my mother taught that to me. So, I saw that there was a bunch of conversations that I was having that left me with impact. I knew that there was a need for it, and honestly, it was something that I really wanted to do. I grew up in New York City, and in the Bronx, there was a church that I went to. One day, this guy, he evangelized to me, and he told me to go to the church. And I remember going to church, and I saw that there was a whole bunch of young people just like praying and, believing in God. And I thought that was really cool, because what I remember church was back then was like long skirts. You can't even see the ankles, you got to act a certain way. And I saw these kids, dancing to hip hop music that was like Christian hip hop music and stuff. That was very inspiring. But going back to like the real reason why I'm bringing this up is because we used to have this thing called Bible study. We'd call it cell groups or whatever. And basically what they were separated by gender. So all the women would have the woman with them, and every week they would meet up. They would talk about the Bible. They would talk about what it is to be a woman and a Christian or whatever. And then for the men, vice versa, they talk about manhood and Christianity and masculinity and like the biblical concepts and whatever this stuff. And I loved it. Like, I loved every second of it. It helped me grow. It helped me, digest. I have everybody has trauma. I have my trauma, like growing up with a single mother is not easy. You're always looking for mentors or people to influence you. If you're around the wrong people, they might take advantage of you. A lot of men get molested when they're younger. So it's like, you go through a lot of things when you don't have a father in your life. You go through a lot of things when you don't have a man who's going to tell you, son, don't do that.
Right.
Son, do this. Son, do that. Like, it doesn't matter what anybody says. You are going to be indoctrinated and influenced in this life. The question is, what are you going to be influenced by? What are you going to be indoctrinated by? I know that word indoctrination sounds very villainous or whatever, but it's like, it is true.
But that's the natural order of things.
Yeah,
A child can only behave the way that they see others behaving.
Exactly.
They can't make up new behaviors. They do that later in life,
Yes.
when they can
Yes.
self-examine and go, oh, I yell because my father yelled, or I do this because that childhood friend of mine was a very violent person. And then you go, I don't want to do that anymore. But you don't start doing that till later in life. Sometimes people never do that. But
yeah, if you're being reflective.
Right.
So basically, the Bible study group that was all men, it was a bunch of adult males, young males, different ages, different walks of life. That was very impactful for me because, like I said, I didn't have a father figure. I didn't have a male in my life who was an example to me, right? So that has always been something that I wanted to do. And at one point, I even was the leader of my own little, my own little Bible study with younger people. And I saw the way that it impacted me to teach or to talk. And I saw the way that it impacted other people. And it impacted me as well, being part of other people's Bible study groups. So it was always something that I wanted to do. As I grew up, I started to realize that there was a need for this, and also there was a need for me to be in this situation. And to be honest, this one person in particular really impacted me. It was on New Year's Eve, I think like 3 years ago or 2 years ago. And we had a conversation. One man who I knew, the other man who I never met. And after that conversation, that guy said to me, his name is Frank. Love you, Frank. Love you a lot.
Love you, Frank.
Yeah, his name is Frank. And he said to me, hey, bro, you should do something like this, like where we talk. Because he's like, this conversation is really impactful for me. I was like, man, it was a pleasure for me. It was very impactful for me. So then I started to really think about it. And I was like, I want to do this. And my girlfriend, you know, she started a few things before, businesses, this and that. And she also inspired me. She's like, hey, you should do this. And I think you can. And, you know, you can host it at my place. And I was like, great, let's do it. So that's
awesome.
how it started. Yeah.
That's great. So how many members do you have right now?
So we don't
regularly.
Yeah.
You know,
so it was a 10 spot situation. 10 slots, because you can only fit a certain amount of people at the space
and give them
attention.
And,
yeah,
right.
exactly. So you know, 10 people usually come. The first season, I do it in seasons. First season was like pretty packed. People were coming every week. Second season, not so much, but people still came and stuff like that. And yeah, it's always either somebody new. We have certain regulars and things like that. But yeah,
that's fantastic.
It's a good diverse amount of people.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would love to attend one of those.
Oh man, I'd love to have you.
That'd
I'd love
be
to have
great.
anybody who's willing to come, you know.
Do you have a sort of like a Facebook page or Instagram, or do you have any way to, is it just word of
To be
mouth?
honest with you, man, I should have a Facebook page or an Instagram page, but I don't. And I'm glad
so it's
that you
word of
said
mouth.
that. Yeah.
Is it a weekly thing, a monthly thing?
So it's a weekly thing. We just finished our second season. What I like to do is 4 to 5 weeks, and then after the 4 to 5 weeks are done, each week is a different topic. The way that it works is that people come in, we open up with a meditation, a silent meditation for the most part, and the reason why we do that, just to touch up on that real quick, is because how much time do we have where we're just silent within our own thoughts and just like
Zero.
Yeah, you know. So meditation is very important to me, and you know, it's not like we're chanting or anything like that. It's not a guided meditation. It's just, hey, focus on your breath, let the thoughts flow, you know, let go of any judgments, whether of yourself or the circle, and just enjoy the silence.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So how long are the sessions?
The sessions are an hour and 30 minutes. Before, we used to have it from 6:30 to 7:30, but then we ended up, every time we would have a circle, we'd ended up leaving like at 8:30 or 9 p.m.
That's great.
So once you get guys can communicate. Listen, if you are in a relationship with a man and you're a girl and you're like, oh, he doesn't communicate, he'll communicate if he feels like he can. And trust me, he'll talk a lot.
Right.
So
show interest in his emotional state as well as his passions, and he will bloom like a flower, and then you won't get him to shut up. My wife,
hold the space for him. Hold the space for him, and he'll do it.
My wife has to listen to me rant about all things, all my passions, all my emotional states, which is great because she takes it all. But my God, I literally can put her to sleep.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh my gosh. Same thing with me.
Go.
Jeez Louise, bro, I can't shut up. Especially in arguments. Like, you know, we don't really argue aggressively, but like
in an
when I'm trying
way.
when I'm trying to prove my point, oh my goodness, I won't stop talking. I won't stop. But you know what it is because I say so much because I care so much. Mm-hmm. Like let's say you're my partner and it's not you sitting there, but like I love you so much and I don't want to be misunderstood. You know, I want to communicate to you so that you don't misunderstand anything that I'm saying. But I want to explain every single detail
of what I'm thinking.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So like it's gotten to the point where my lady's like, honey, just get to the point, please. Like, you know, and sometimes that even upsets me, but I see what she means. You know, you got to communicate more effectively.
Effectively, right?
Know?
Yeah.
So,
my next question for you is, is it just a place to talk? Specifically, like, let's say there's 10 of us, guy number 1, he's going to talk. Do people respond to that? Or we just go and now he's done talking and now we're going to go to number 2? Like, is it an open dialogue?
I love that. Yeah. Okay. So, just to explain it further. We go there, we meditate in, we also meditate out as well.
Great.
It's very, it's topic based, and usually I have 3 to 5 thought provoking prompts. So for example, one of our first session was about manhood. And the first question was, what is manhood to you? You know, and basically each person, we take a pause and each person has a time to write down their thought-provoking prompt answer, right? They write their answer, and then we literally go in the circle and we say, okay, hey, Michael, what was your answer to that prompt? You say your prompt. If somebody wants to interrupt, they could either raise their hand or like they'll strategically wait for the person to stop in a way, you know? It's so funny. You think that you have to be so meticulous and organized. Like I slacked a long time on starting the circle. And when I actually started it, I realized how in flow everything became. You get men in a room and you let them know that it's good and not competitive. They could talk.
Right.
We will respect each other and we will let each other speak. The amount I don't have to do anything really. I'm not the leader. Like I'm not like the teacher. I'm just the person who started the fire and was like, hey guys, come on down.
Right.
That's literally how I run it and how I do it. So
the majority of men I've come in contact with have been lovely people who care deeply, who feel emotionally stunted perhaps, who feel like they're not allowed to express themselves and be honest, who feel vulnerable. But almost all of them, the majority of the men I've come into contact with have been lovely people who respect and admire other people, and they have a hard time taking criticism, which is like a classic trait for men, but exists in a lot of people. And that's where that, you know, again, we come back to toxic masculinity. That's one of the big ones is like being unable to hear that you've done wrong. I totally get that. Oh my
goodness, bro.
That triggers me so hard because I try so hard to be good. And then when I hear that I've done wrong, man, my body just gets into this like,
you're like, oh, like, and then you could fall into even more toxic trait where it's like, oh, you're telling me what I do wrong? Well, guess what you do wrong.
Right?
It's like,
and shared by both men and women, but does often occur in men. I think women in our society are more, they've adapted more to being like, okay, you're right. You didn't do anything wrong. They take that road because they're afraid of
which sucks.
Our violence. And sucks. So when then we've grown into this world of like, I didn't do anything wrong. So, you know, again,
not taking responsibility, which is not masculine, by the way, guys.
A real man takes responsibility.
Yes, a real man takes responsibility, even though it's hard. A real man is honest. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what a real man is. I'm sorry if I'm cutting into time, but it's like a real man and a masculine man is honest, assertive, he's respectful and kind. He has the option of violence, but with great power comes great responsibility, right? So he can be violent, but he doesn't choose to be. And it's not like, oh, I'm being merciful. No, it's like, hey, it's an option, right? But it's not the option that you're going to take, right? Real men can communicate with their words. I'm with all due respect, and I'm not trying to boost myself up, I know how to fight, right? I know how to defend myself. But I guarantee you I've never been in a fight or in a combative situation outside of the gym when I started training jiu-jitsu. Why? Because I don't have nothing to prove.
Right.
And I'm a respectful man. You know, once you learn how to, you learn how to fight so that you never have to. Right. That's the irony of practicing martial arts. Yeah. Most of us martial artists are not out there trying to fight somebody unless we haven't healed the trauma or whatever it is that brought us in there. So it's like you're responsible. You can admit that you're wrong. You learn from your mistakes. You can be kind. You can be assertive. You can be all of those things and be masculine. You can cry. You can cry in a movie.
You are unafraid to love. Openly, honestly, I think one of the strongest traits that a man can have is that he is unafraid to show love and be loving.
Yes, there is strength and vulnerability. You know, without fear, there's no courage, right? So it's like, I don't think that men should always be crying and always be in touch with their emotions. And no, I don't. I think that men should control their emotions. They should understand that as men, they have a great responsibility, not only to themselves, but to their family, to society, to their community, to their, you know, to everything, right? So men are not always supposed to be vulnerable. Men are supposed to sometimes rub dirt in it and shut up and go to work. And, you know, everybody has a story and all that stuff.
I think when you say something like that, what I really hear is your emotional state isn't necessarily paramount. It's not so important. Like being an angry person is not important. That it's not important that you express that anger. Yeah. It's important that you see it, accept it, and then let it go. Find a way to resolve it and let it go. That's important.
To work through
Acknowledging it is important, but holding on to it and making sure it casts this long shadow everywhere you go, that's the let it go to work. Yeah. Right? Yeah. You know, I think the rub some dirt in it.
Or put it to the side.
Right. but find a way as an adult. An adult sees their emotions, sees their anger, their sadness, and they can accept it, see it, let it flow out of them, and then not push it on other people.
I would say,
and that can be a masculine trait, and it should be.
Yes.
The kind of person who goes, yes, I'm having a crappy day, but guess what? There are people that need me right now. So instead of pushing this down to somewhere I'm not going to deal with it, I'm going to deal with it like a responsible adult. I'm going to self-reflect, and then I'm going to let it go, and I'm going to make sure other people don't have to deal with it.
Self-reflection, that's also important. That's another reason why the circle was made, in my opinion. And I didn't create men's circles, by the way, but I just saw there was a need for one, and I started one. But self-reflection, it helps with self-reflection. Listen, it may not be the therapy for somebody, but it may open up somebody to the opportunity of therapy, to the option of therapy, not the opportunity, the option of therapy,
right.
you know? So I think that's a great thing. And, you know, what you said, self-reflection, man, that's such a powerful thing. And a lot of my growth has come from that, you know, it's come from reflecting. Did I do this right? Did I say this right? Did I communicate this right? Not, you know, judging myself in a negative way, but seeing what I can learn, who I can learn from. You know, a lot of the people that I've learned from were things that they did wrong that I was like, ooh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be like that. You know what I mean? So
absolutely,
I think that's important. And, you know, it's good that you said that. You know, it's not necessarily like rub dirt in it, shut up and go, but like understand that your emotions do not have to dictate how you act.
Right.
If men were out here just acting emotional,
which they do constantly,
yeah.
That's toxic masculinity.
Yeah, it would be a dangerous. It would be like a much, if all men is what I mean to say. That's why the Bible says the heart is deceitful. You know, because it's like your heart will deceive you at times. You know,
I find it's the opposite. I find, and I understand what the Bible's saying.
Yeah.
The Bible really what it's trying to get at is your emotions will deceive you. I guess it just depends on where you place the emotional center of your being and your honest soul center. Where I place emotions, funny enough, is up in the mind, not in the heart. I think the heart is an honest, you know, maybe legitimately the actual heart, but the soul, what have you, that's not where emotions actually come from for me. They come from the ego, right? The ego is like, that person said that thing about me and now I feel insulted, I'm sad, I'm angry, or this thing's really great, I love this thing, I'm happy, right? I find that the soul doesn't deal in emotions, it just deals in like this sort of peace. You know, the serenity, whereas the mind creates. Because if you really, and I'm sure you've experienced this, like when I started meditating, I deal with anger, right, and it comes up constantly.
Crazy. I mean, you would think that, but you're such a good, nice person.
Well, I appreciate that, but I've been working hard on it, and
I respect that.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
But what I've been experiencing is that I can actually, because I'm meditating, I can see the thought generate in the mind.
Yeah.
Right. You see that person doesn't think I'm good enough at this. Okay, so the thought generates. Then what happens next? Then the body goes shivers with this red anger, and I can watch the shiver of anger go up and down the body. But because I've gotten good at meditating, I'm watching it happen. I'm back here watching the body go.
Yeah.
And then if I just keep watching, it all dissipates.
Yeah,
Suddenly it's gone. Suddenly that shiver of anger is gone. So I find that, you know, when we allow ourselves to let our emotions dictate the way we behave, we're allowing this childish ego to run away with the body, run away, you know, take our body for a joyride.
And two things I want to say, because your friend, what you said about your friend really left an impression on me. I feel like there's a lot of dating advice going around, right? There's this thing called the red pill or the manosphere, black pill, blue pill, all of these things. Started off like in the pickup artist community first. But basically there's like there's a subculture on Instagram and YouTube and TikTok that speaks about men and women and intersexual dynamics and all this stuff and human female nature and all of this stuff. And a lot of this stuff has some merit, but like I feel like what your friend is experiencing and how he's acting, he probably is watching some of those YouTube channels or probably speaking to somebody who's like, bro, you should cut her off if she's not acting right or whatever. And it's like, bro, let me give you, as far as I know, grew up with a single mother. One of my life's missions is to be the man that I knew my mother deserved.
Wow.
Period.
That's really sweet.
Period. So that doesn't mean I'm a simp or whatever. No. I'm gonna be a man, and I'm gonna love myself, right? Not to. I'm not trying to make this like a religious thing, but like the Bible really impacted me, so I always quote the Bible. But the Bible says, "Love your neighbor as you love yourself." Love your neighbor as you love yourself. People only hear the love your neighbor part.
Right. They forget that other part.
Love yourself.
Right.
Right? When people, that's why the Bible also says meditate on the word day and night, right? So like love your neighbor as you love yourself. You have to love yourself first. Remember what I said at the beginning. You cannot give what you don't have. This cup of water right here needs to be filled with something. Okay? And it needs to be filled by something.
Right.
The jug. Right? So what you give is what you have. If you and I are talking and I start to disrespect you, that's what I have.
You
From the
disrespect
abundance of the
yourself.
heart, the mouth
Right.
speaks, right? The Bible also says that. So if I'm being mean to you, how much meaner am I being to myself when nobody's around?
Excellent. Manny, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on today. We've had
Thank
such
you,
a great
man.
conversation. I bet we could go for another 3 hours
Oh, I'm sure we can.
nonstop. But we'll have you back on the show. No questions asked there. This has been very informative. Great conversation. I think we had a blast. And yeah, thank you so much, man.
Man, I'm honored.
I really
Thank
appreciate you
Yeah,
coming on, man.
Thank you.
Folks, well, how can anybody contact you if they
So
want to?
Instagram, Preshman on Instagram. That's a jiu-jitsu reference. Or you can follow me at Manny Sells Upstate, which is my real estate Instagram. That's how you can reach me.
Excellent.
Yeah. And you can
Excellent.
reach the men's circles at myzenden.com or look at the Instagram and see what they post.
Excellent. All right, guys. Well, we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for watching. See ya.